I never imagined that the boy I nursed back to health through chickenpox, the young man I stayed up all night helping study for his anatomy exams, the son I worked double shifts as a nurse to put through medical school, would one day look me directly in the eyes as I lay bleeding out on a hospital gurney and whisper, "I'd rather watch you die than waste a drop of my blood on a failure like you." Those were the exact words my son Daniel, a 43-year-old cardiac surgeon, spat into my soul as the emergency team pleaded with him to donate the O-negative blood he carried, the blood that could have saved my life. His voice was cold, surgical, devoid of humanity. It wasn't the physical pain of the hemorrhage in my abdomen that destroyed me that night. It was the realization that my only son, the man I raised with love, sacrifice, and faith, had already buried me in his heart. Before I tell you how this nightmare unfolded and how I turned it into the greatest act of justice of my life, let me ask you something. If you are hearing my voice right now, please subscribe to this channel, Her Voice Story, and tap the bell icon, because every day we bring you the stories nobody else dares to tell, the stories of betrayal, revenge, and survival that prove no one is ever too old to fight back. Leave me a like, and in the comments, tell me the city and state you're watching from. I read them all, and it gives me strength knowing my story travels farther than the lies my family spun around me. Now let's begin. It was the evening of October 12, 2024, when my life took the first of many sharp turns. I had been feeling sharp pains in my stomach for several days, but being a stubborn nurse with 40 years of bedside experience, I brushed it off as age catching up with me. Nurses are the worst patients, we always say. I had retired 3 years earlier, but the echoes of alarms, the smell of antiseptic, and the instinct to endure pain without complaint had never left me. That night, alone in my small brick house in Arlington, Virginia, I collapsed on the kitchen floor with blood pooling in my throat. I managed to crawl to the phone and dial 911 before everything went dark. When I woke up, fluorescent lights blazed overhead, monitors screamed alarms, and my body shook with weakness I had never felt before. The ER physician, a young man named Dr. Alvarez, explained in grave tones, "Mrs. Hartman, you've suffered a ruptured esophageal varix. You're bleeding internally. We need an immediate transfusion. Your type is O-negative, very rare, and the blood bank is running low. We're trying to locate more, but time is critical. Do you have family we can contact?" My heart leapt with relief through the fog of pain. My son, my Daniel, a brilliant surgeon, O-negative like me. Surely he would rush to my side. Surely he would remember the woman who scrubbed floors in the hospital cafeteria just to afford his textbooks, the mother who stitched his torn baseball pants after midnight so he could run the bases proudly, the grandmother who adored his daughter more than life itself. Yes, he would come. Yes, he would save me. The nurse called him at 4:15 a.m. He arrived at 5:02 a.m., immaculate in his tailored suit, the smell of expensive cologne cutting through the metallic tang of my own blood. Relief washed over me when I saw him walk through the sliding ER doors. "My son," I whispered through cracked lips. "My boy." He looked at me with a face I didn't recognize. Stone, cold, detached. Dr. Alvarez approached him quickly. "Dr. Hartman, your mother is in critical condition. You're a perfect match. A donation of just 400 milliliters could stabilize her until we get more from the Red Cross. Time is running out." There was silence. The kind of silence that swallows a room whole. Daniel's eyes locked onto mine. I saw no love there, no hesitation, no flicker of the boy who once hugged me at graduation and whispered, "I couldn't have done this without you, Mom." He drew in a slow breath, his jaw tightening. Then he said the words that split me open more deeply than any scalpel ever could. I won't waste a drop of my blood on her. She's a failure. She always was. The room froze. A nurse gasped. Dr. Alvarez stammered. "Doctor, this is your mother. She'll die without—" "Then let her die," Daniel interrupted, his voice sharp as glass. "The sooner she's gone, the sooner I can stop cleaning up her messes. Don't look at me like that. She knows what she did." His lips curled into a smile so cruel, it made my heart spasm harder than the hemorrhage ripping through my veins. I could barely breathe, but through the haze of pain, I felt my instincts sharpen. Years as a nurse had taught me to survive in chaos, to think 2 steps ahead, even while blood soaked the sheets. I had a secret, a small body camera clipped discreetly to the inside of my cardigan. I had worn it ever since a fall last year after my lawyer suggested it for my own protection. My son had no idea every venomous syllable he spoke was being recorded in pristine clarity. I closed my eyes, pretending weakness, while inside me a seed of fire burned to life. Daniel thought I was a dying old woman, helpless and disposable. What he didn't know was that I had just captured the first nail in the coffin of his glittering reputation. And this was only the beginning, because within the next week, I would overhear a conversation between him and his wife that revealed a betrayal even darker than his refusal to save me. For the next several days, I drifted between morphine dreams and cold flashes of clarity, my body stitched back together by surgeons I did not know, while my mind replayed my son's words on an endless loop. Let her die. She's a failure. The transfusion that saved me had come not from him, but from a stranger at another hospital, a faceless donor whose generosity stood in violent contrast to the cruelty of the man I had raised. I knew I couldn't confront Daniel yet. To him, I was weak, fading, confused, and so I decided to let him believe that lie. I slurred my speech, let my hand tremble when I reached for water, pretended to forget the date when the nurse asked. My long career as a nurse had taught me how to read patients, but it had also taught me how to play the role of one. I became the frail old woman in the bed, pliant and foggy, a perfect mask. On the 4th night of my hospitalization, the mask paid off. It was near midnight when I heard the door to my room ease open. Through the slit of my lashes, I saw Daniel step in, followed by Becca, his wife, heels clicking softly against the tile. She was dressed in her usual armor, designer trench coat, perfect hair, a sneer barely hidden behind her lipstick smile. They thought I was asleep, my chest rising slow and shallow under the dim glow of the vitals monitor. "Are you sure she can't hear us?" Becca whispered, casting a wary glance at my bed. "She's out cold. The meds have her doped to the gills," Daniel replied flatly. "Besides, even if she heard, she wouldn't remember a thing." My blood ran cold, though I kept my face slack. Becca leaned closer to him, her voice dropping into a hiss. "We don't have much time, Danny. You need to push her into long-term care. The Santa Maria facility has an opening next week. Once she's admitted, she'll be under evaluation for dementia. I already talked to the administrator. He owes me a favor." "Relax," Daniel said with the confidence of a man who thought the world bent for him. "I've got it handled. I'll have Dr. Collins draft the psych evaluation. All it takes is one signature to declare her incompetent. Once that's done, I'll be her legal guardian, and every account, every property, every cent she's been hoarding all these years becomes mine to manage." Becca's eyes glittered in the half-light. "And the houses? Don't forget the beach house in Delaware, the apartments in Arlington, the bank accounts. You said she has at least $900,000 liquid, right?" My heart thudded painfully. They weren't just circling my money. They had already counted it, planned its division, stripped my life down to numbers in their greedy little hands. Daniel's voice sharpened with irritation. "Yes, Becca, I know the assets. I built the spreadsheet myself. The beach house is worth at least $650,000. The Arlington apartments another $1.2 million. Once she's locked away, it's all streamlined. We'll pay off my malpractice debts, clear the lawsuits, and finally breathe again." I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. Malpractice? Debts? My perfect, brilliant surgeon son had hidden rot behind his polished image. Becca shifted, her voice tightening. And what about Emma? My heart jolted. Emma, my granddaughter. 17, with a laugh like wind chimes and a heart that had never stopped defending me, even when her parents mocked me as old-fashioned. She adores her grandmother, and she's not stupid. She'll suspect something if you ship your mother off. Daniel scoffed, a harsh sound in the sterile air. She's a kid. She doesn't get a say. We'll tell her grandma's mind is slipping, that it's for her safety. If she resists, we'll pack her off to boarding school in Massachusetts. Problem solved. A rage unlike anything I had ever known surged through me, but I forced my breathing to remain shallow, my eyes closed. They weren't just plotting to steal my money. They were plotting to erase me, to silence me, to rip my granddaughter away and bury me in some facility as though I had already died. Becca wrapped her arms around Daniel's waist, her voice syrupy. When this is over, we'll finally have the life we deserve. No more debts, no more pretending. Just us and everything she built. Daniel kissed her forehead, murmuring, "Soon, baby, very soon." They left quietly, the door sighing shut behind them, but the echo of their words rattled the walls of my soul. I waited until the hallway was silent again before reaching for the small pendant around my neck. Inside was not a picture of my late husband, as Daniel and Becca believed, but a micro recorder, one I had carried ever since a break-in at my apartment last year. Every word of their conspiracy was sealed within it, another piece of ammunition for the battle I was about to wage. But I knew I couldn't strike yet. I needed more proof, more time, more allies, and I would get them, even if it meant dragging my failing body through fire. Because Daniel may have thought I was his helpless, senile mother, but he had no idea the strength that comes from a nurse who has fought death every day of her working life. I had survived the hospital. Now I would survive him. And what I was about to discover about his career, his debts, and the secrets Becca was hiding would prove that their betrayal went deeper than I could ever imagine.
Over the next week, I perfected the art of deception. Every time Daniel or Becca visited, I let my eyes wander as if I couldn't focus, stammered when I spoke, even asked the nurse what year it was loud enough for them to hear. Their satisfaction was palpable. They thought their plan was working. But once they left, I became myself again, sharper than ever, scribbling notes on the back of my meal menus, piecing together every clue they carelessly dropped. My years as a nurse had taught me how to read charts, how to notice what others missed, and I applied those instincts now, not to a patient, but to my own son. Something gnawed at me. Daniel's mention of malpractice debts. I had spent my life believing he was flawless, the prodigy who made headlines for performing complex bypass surgeries in record time. But if what I overheard was true, then behind the surgical masks and accolades, there was rot. I decided to test my theory by reaching out to an old friend, Margaret, who had worked with me in the ER for 2 decades before she retired. She still had contacts at the hospital, and I trusted her more than anyone alive. I whispered into the phone from my hospital bed, disguising my strength as labored weakness. "Margie, it's me. I need you to find out everything you can about lawsuits against Daniel Hartman, discreetly." Her pause on the line was long, but finally she said, "Honey, if there's something there, I'll dig it up. But brace yourself. Doctors like your boy don't get sued lightly." 2 days later, she came to see me in person, bringing a small folder she slid under my blanket like contraband. My hands trembled as I opened it, not from weakness, but from dread. Inside were court filings, complaint summaries, even news clippings. My son had been named in not 1, not 2, but 3 malpractice suits in the past year alone. One family accused him of performing an unnecessary spinal surgery that left their father paralyzed. Another claimed he botched a valve replacement on a woman whose heart had been stable. The third, and worst, alleged that he falsified test results to convince an elderly man to undergo surgery then lacerated an artery so badly the man nearly bled out. I swallowed hard as I read line after line, the words blurring until tears streaked the paper. This wasn't just negligence. This was deliberate exploitation, fraud, wrapped in surgical gloves. My Daniel, my son, the boy I worked night shifts for, had become a predator in scrubs. But the rabbit hole went deeper. Margaret lowered her voice. There's talk around the hospital, quiet but persistent. He's been gambling, big losses. And Becca, your lovely daughter-in-law, she's been involved too. As her attorney, she's covered his tracks, falsified reports, buried evidence. Word is, she even helped forge signatures to transfer property. My blood chilled. The rumors weren't just hospital gossip. They dovetailed too neatly with what I'd overheard. Becca wasn't just a greedy wife. She was his co-conspirator, the hand steadying his crimes. I clutched Margaret's hand. Margie, I need proof. Solid proof. She nodded grimly. I'll see what I can pull from the court archives. That night, alone in my hospital room, I pressed the pendant recorder against my chest and whispered, You thought you buried me, Daniel, but I am still here, and I am watching. By morning, I was discharged, sent home with instructions to rest. I played the invalid role to perfection, wobbling on my cane as Emma, sweet Emma, came to stay with me for the weekend. She was my light in the darkness, a teenager who had no idea her parents' love for money outweighed their love for family. But she noticed things. As we sat together watching a cooking show, she looked at me with wide, worried eyes. Grandma, Mom and Dad have been fighting a lot. They whisper about you, about money. Are they trying to put you in a home? I forced a shaky smile. Don't you worry, darling. Your grandma's tougher than she looks. Inside, my resolve hardened. Emma was the one pure thing left in this broken family, and I would not let Daniel and Becca poison her future. The following Tuesday, my lawyer of 20 years, Henry Caldwell, came to see me. He was a man of iron reputation, with a gaze that could cut through lies like a scalpel. I laid everything on the table, the recordings from the hospital, the overheard conversation about the nursing home, Margaret's folder of malpractice suits. He listened in silence, then leaned forward, steepling his fingers. Mrs. Hartman, what your son and daughter-in-law are plotting isn't just unethical, it's criminal. Fraud, conspiracy, elder abuse. But we need more. They're smart, connected. If we go at them now, they'll wriggle out. We need to catch them red-handed, something they can't explain away. His words were terrifying and exhilarating. For decades, I had followed the law, saving lives, obeying rules. Now the law would become my scalpel, and I knew exactly how to wield it. Henry suggested I continue to play weak, let them believe they had won, while we built the case brick by brick. I agreed, but I added one condition. Emma must never be harmed. He nodded. Protecting her may be the very key to breaking this open. Children have a way of exposing the truth adults try to bury. That night, after Henry left, I found Emma in the kitchen scrolling on her phone. She looked up, eyes brimming with a mixture of fear and loyalty. Grandma, Mom and Dad have been fighting a lot. They whisper about you, about money. Are they trying to put you in a home? I forced a shaky smile. Don't worry, darling. Your grandma's tougher than she looks. Inside, my resolve hardened. Emma was the one pure thing left in this broken family, and I would not let Daniel and Becca poison her future. The following Tuesday, my lawyer of 20 years, Henry Caldwell, came to see me. He was a man of iron reputation, with a gaze that could cut through lies like a scalpel. I laid everything on the table, the recordings from the hospital, the overheard conversation about the nursing home, Margaret's folder of malpractice suits. He listened in silence, then leaned forward,
steepling his fingers. Mrs. Hartman, what your son and daughter-in-law are plotting isn't just unethical, it's criminal. Fraud, conspiracy, elder abuse. But we need more. They're smart, connected. If we go at them now, they'll wriggle out. We need to catch them red-handed, something they can't explain away. His words were terrifying and exhilarating. For decades, I had followed the law, saving lives, obeying rules. Now the law would become my scalpel, and I knew exactly how to wield it. Henry suggested I continue to play weak, let them believe they had won, while we built the case brick by brick. I agreed, but I added one condition. Emma must never be harmed. He nodded. Protecting her may be the very key to breaking this open. Children have a way of exposing the truth adults try to bury. That night, after Henry left, I found Emma in the kitchen scrolling on her phone. She looked up, eyes brimming with a mixture of fear and loyalty. Grandma, Mom and Dad have been fighting a lot. They whisper about you, about money. Are they trying to put you in a home? I forced a shaky smile. Don't worry, darling. Your grandma's tougher than she looks. Inside, my resolve hardened. Emma was the one pure thing left in this broken family, and I would not let Daniel and Becca poison her future. One day soon, Emma, I whispered, I might ask you to be very brave. When that day comes, you'll know, and together we'll make sure the truth comes out. I went to bed with my mind racing. My son was drowning in debts, malpractice suits closing in, his wife knee-deep in fraud, and they thought they could bury me alive to solve their problems. They had no idea I was already setting the trap. But what I didn't know was that the very next morning, Emma would stumble upon something hidden in her mother's briefcase, something so shocking it would turn our plan from careful investigation into a fight for survival. The morning sun slanted through the blinds when I heard Emma's voice tremble from the hallway. "Grandma," she whispered urgently, clutching something against her chest like contraband. "You need to see this." I motioned her into my bedroom, careful to keep my movements slow and feeble, just in case Daniel or Becca had cameras hidden somewhere. She closed the door softly, then unfolded a stack of papers she had pulled from her mother's leather briefcase. My stomach clenched as I scanned the bold heading across the top: Medical Evaluation, Cognitive Decline Assessment. And there, beneath the lines of clinical jargon, was my own name: Eleanor Hartman, 72 years old, severe dementia, incapable of financial decision-making. It was signed, dated, and stamped with a seal that looked official enough to fool any bank or judge. My blood ran cold. I had no appointments, no evaluations, no tests. Yet here it was, a fabricated document that could strip me of my rights with the swipe of a pen. Emma's hand shook. "Grandma, Mom had this in her bag. It even has your signature at the bottom, but it's not your writing. I know what your signature looks like. You taught me to copy it when we wrote holiday cards." I pulled her close, my heart breaking for her innocence caught in such poison. "You did good finding this, sweetheart. But we must be very careful now. If they realize you've seen this, they'll use you against me." Emma's chin quivered, but her eyes blazed with determination far beyond her years. "Then we fight, Grandma, whatever it takes." I hugged her tightly, then tucked the forged document under my mattress, my mind whirring like a machine. This was it, the smoking gun. With Henry's legal expertise and Margaret's insider connections, this could blow the conspiracy wide open. But the danger had multiplied tenfold. If Becca discovered her daughter had rifled through her briefcase, the girl could be sent away, cut off, silenced. I couldn't let that happen. That afternoon, Daniel and Becca arrived, all false smiles and crocodile concern. "How's our patient?" Becca sang, placing a bouquet of lilies on my dresser, the smell cloying and sickly. Daniel pulled a chair to my bedside, his stethoscope swung casually around his neck, as if he wanted the whole world to remember who held power here. I played my role, fumbling with the blanket, muttering, "I forget things, so many things." His eyes gleamed. "Don't worry, Mom. We'll take care of everything soon." I caught Emma's eye across the room and saw her fists clench. My sweet granddaughter wanted to scream the truth, to tear the mask from their faces, but she stayed silent, trusting me. That night, once the house was quiet, I phoned Henry in a whisper, reading the details from the forged certificate. He was silent for a long moment before answering, "This is bigger than I thought. They're not waiting to try and declare you incompetent. They've already manufactured the paperwork. Eleanor, if they file this in court, you could lose everything within days." My chest tightened. "Then we don't have days. We have hours." He instructed me to guard the paper with my life, promising he would move quickly to secure injunctions and notify the proper authorities. But before we could act, another twist landed like a grenade. The next morning, Emma burst into my room with her phone, her face pale as milk. "Grandma, look!" On the screen was a text thread between Becca and someone saved as Collins. The messages made my blood freeze. "Certificate finalized. Submit to bank Friday. She won't know what hit her. Make sure the girl doesn't find out. Boarding school papers are ready." Emma's voice cracked. "Grandma, they're talking about me. They're going to ship me off like I'm baggage." My heart pounded with fury. They weren't satisfied with forging my diagnosis. They were planning to exile the only person who loved me. I cupped her cheeks. "Listen to me, darling. They think they're in control, but they don't know we have the upper hand now. We're going to flip this on them, but you must be brave and play along." Her eyes shimmered with tears, but she nodded firmly. That evening, when Daniel returned, I feigned a confused smile. "Danny, I've been thinking. Maybe you're right. Maybe I am slipping. Maybe it's time you helped me with the money." His face lit with sick satisfaction. He leaned close, whispering, "Don't worry, Mom. I'll take care of everything. Just sign what Becca brings tomorrow." My skin crawled at the brush of his breath, but I forced a nod, pretending to trust him. Later, as Emma and I sat in the kitchen, I whispered the plan. Tomorrow, when Becca arrived with the papers, we would let her believe I was signing everything away. But the room would not be empty. Cameras, microphones, and hidden eyes would witness it all. Emma bit her lip. "But, Grandma, what if they realize? What if they catch us?" I squeezed her hand. "Then we fight louder, harder, stronger than ever, because no one buries me alive." That night, I barely slept, listening to the creaks of the old house, every shadow feeling like an intruder. But by dawn, I was steady. My son thought I was weak. My daughter-in-law thought I was blind. Tomorrow, they would both learn the truth. Yet little did I know, their desperation had already reached a breaking point, and what they brought to my house the next day was far more dangerous than a stack of forged papers. The next day arrived cloaked in dread, the kind of morning where every sound seemed sharper, every shadow longer. I sat in my armchair wrapped in a blanket, the forged patient my son believed me to be, while Emma hovered nearby pretending to scroll her phone. At precisely 2 in the afternoon, Daniel and Becca swept in like vultures, their voices syrupy with false affection. Becca carried a sleek leather folder clutched to her chest as though it contained salvation, not destruction. Daniel kissed my cheek with practiced tenderness, then exchanged a quick glance with his wife. "Mom," he began softly, "we've been thinking a lot about your future. We know you're tired. We know it's hard keeping up with all your responsibilities. That's why we brought something to make life easier." Becca set the folder on the coffee table and slid it toward me, her manicured finger tapping the corner. "All you have to do is sign, Eleanor, a power of attorney. Then Danny can handle your bills, your accounts, your properties. You won't have to worry about a thing." My pulse hammered as I stared at the papers, feigning confusion. "Oh, I don't remember all that. Maybe I should rest first." Becca's smile didn't reach her eyes. She reached into her purse, pulling out a small amber vial. "Of course, dear. Why don't you take this first? The doctor prescribed it to help with your anxiety and memory." She shook out 2 pills into her palm, extending them toward me with a glass of water Daniel had poured. My stomach turned to ice. They weren't trying to convince me, they were trying to drug me. My training as a nurse kicked in instantly. Those weren't mild sedatives. I recognized these imprints on the tablets, lorazepam, heavy doses, enough to cloud judgment, dull awareness, maybe even induce blackouts in someone my age. Emma's hand tightened around her phone under the blanket, recording every move. I forced my lips to tremble, my eyes to flutter. "Oh, thank you, Becca. You always think of me." I raised the glass to my mouth, pretending to swallow while my tongue slicked the pills to the inside of my cheek. I handed the empty glass back with a weak smile. Daniel exhaled, visibly relieved. "Good. This will make things smoother. Now, Mom, just sign here." He opened the folder, sliding the first document across the table. My signature was already printed at the bottom, a crude forgery, and this page was meant to confirm it. My hand shook as I took the pen, deliberately smudging the ink just enough to make the act look authentic. Inside, fury roared like wildfire. My own mother and her wife were willing to sedate me to obedience, to treat me not as a mother, but as an obstacle. Becca leaned forward eagerly. "That's it, Eleanor. Just a little more. Once this is finished, you can rest, and we'll handle everything." At that moment, Emma coughed deliberately, a sharp sound that masked the faint click from the hidden recorder Henry had installed inside the clock on the mantel. Every word, every pill, every forged paper was being captured in perfect clarity. But the danger wasn't over. Becca reached for the second page, her hand brushing against the folder's edge. A small plastic bag slipped free and fluttered to the carpet. Emma gasped as I caught sight of its contents. More pills, a higher dosage, labeled under a different patient's name. My heart dropped. They weren't just sedating me. They had stolen medications, controlled substances, possibly to use against me or to claim I was confused and addicted. I forced myself to stay calm, feigning ignorance, as Daniel quickly snatched the bag and stuffed it back into his pocket. "She doesn't need to see that," he muttered, then smiled again, his mask slipping for only a moment. I lowered my pen, pretending exhaustion. "Maybe I'll finish tomorrow. I'm so tired." Becca's patience cracked. She leaned close, her breath hot in my ear. "Sign it, Eleanor. Sign it now, or you'll regret it." Her words dripped venom, a tone Emma had never heard before. I felt my granddaughter tense beside me, her body rigid with rage. But before either of us could react, headlights swept across the window, the signal. Henry and Margaret had arrived, waiting for my call. I needed just one more push, one more incriminating statement before springing the trap. So I let my hand tremble, my voice quaver. "Danny, why are you doing this? Don't you love me anymore?" For the briefest moment, his mask cracked. His eyes hardened into ice. "Love doesn't pay lawsuits, Mom. Love doesn't fix a ruined career. You had your life. Now it's my turn to take what's mine." The words sliced through the room like glass shattering. Becca grinned, satisfied. "Exactly. And if you won't give it willingly, we'll make sure the courts take it for us." Emma's hand vibrated under the blanket, the cue from Henry that the team was in position outside. But before I could utter the prearranged phrase that would summon them in, Daniel reached for the folder again, his face darkening with impatience. "Enough games. Sign it now, Mother, or I swear you'll never see Emma again." My blood froze as Emma gasped audibly, her cover nearly blown. They weren't bluffing anymore. They were ready to rip her from me. My grip tightened around the pen as my mind raced. Do I spring the trap now and risk everything, or do I hold for one more piece of proof? Because the next words out of Becca's mouth were about to change the entire game forever. The air in my living room felt like a sealed coffin, heavy and suffocating, as Daniel's demand hung between us. "Sign it now, Mother, or I swear you'll never see Emma again." Emma's fingers clutched mine under the blanket, her nails digging into my skin, begging me silently not to break. I forced my voice to tremble, my hand hovering above the paper as if I might cave, when Becca suddenly leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with a cruelty that froze the blood in my veins. "Danny," she whispered, "just tell her the truth. She deserves to know what happens to people who stand in our way." His jaw tightened. "Becca, no!" She cut him off, her voice rising. "She needs to hear it. Maybe then she'll realize there's no escape." She turned her venom on me, her tone low and razor sharp. "Do you remember a patient named Robert Harris, Eleanor? 75, heart surgery, died on the table last year." My pulse stuttered. I remembered reading about it in the paper, a respected businessman who'd collapsed under mysterious complications. Becca smirked. "He didn't just die. Daniel let him die. Intentionally. He was broke, and Robert's family was suing for malpractice, so Daniel gave them exactly what they wanted, a corpse they couldn't question." My world tilted. My nurse's instinct screamed the truth of her words. I'd seen surgeons slip, falter, panic, but I had never heard of one choosing to let a man bleed out. Daniel's face was stone, but his silence screamed confirmation. "And guess who falsified the report?" Becca hissed. "Me. I shred evidence, rewrote files, and made sure the coroner signed off without asking questions. Do you really think we're afraid of forging one more signature? Yours is nothing compared to the ones we've already buried." My breath caught as nausea coiled in my gut. They weren't just plotting against me. They were criminals with blood on their hands, murderers hiding behind lab coats and law degrees. Emma's gasp slipped out before she could stop it, sharp and horrified, and Becca's head snapped toward her like a predator. "What was that?" she demanded. Emma tried to mask it with a cough, but Daniel's suspicion narrowed into focus. "She's recording," he muttered, his voice like acid. His eyes darted to her phone under the blanket. My heart dropped as he reached forward, snatching at her hands. Emma screamed, clutching the device to her chest as if it were her lifeline, which it was. "Give it to me," Daniel barked, his composure unraveling as he wrestled against his own daughter. I shot from my chair with a strength I hadn't shown in weeks, grabbing his arm. "Don't you dare touch her." He shoved me back with shocking force, my body slamming into the arm of the couch, pain flaring up my ribs. Becca lunged too, clawing at Emma's phone, and for a split second it felt like the end, like all my careful planning had collapsed into chaos. But then the clock on the mantel ticked twice, loud and deliberate, the hidden mic, the signal. Within seconds, the front door burst open and Henry strode in, flanked by two men in plain clothes, investigators he had contacted days earlier. Their badges flashed like salvation. "Step away from the girl," one commanded, his voice booming. Daniel froze mid-grapple, his face twisting in disbelief. Becca's hand hovered inches from Emma's phone, her eyes wide as the reality crashed down around them. The investigators spread out, one retrieving the phone gently from Emma, the other confiscating the folder of forged documents from the coffee table. Henry moved straight to my side, helping me upright, his jaw set with fury. "We've got enough," he said firmly. "The drugs, the forgeries, the threats, it's all here." But Daniel wasn't done fighting. He straightened, his voice dripping contempt. "Do you think this'll stick? I'm a surgeon. I have colleagues, connections. Judges owe me favors. You can't destroy me with a few pills and signatures." Becca tried to echo his defiance, but her voice cracked. "We've covered everything. There's no proof." "Wrong," Henry cut in coldly. "We have hours of recordings, Mrs. Hartman, conversations from the hospital, from this house, and now, thanks to your arrogance, we also have your confession to aiding and abetting homicide." The word hung in the air. Homicide, slamming down like a gavel. Becca blanched, her confidence shattering. Daniel's eyes flicked to her, fury blazing. "You stupid." But before he could finish, the investigator stepped forward, snapping a pair of handcuffs open with a click that echoed through the room. "Daniel Hartman, Rebecca Hartman, you are under investigation for elder abuse, fraud, conspiracy, and now potentially second-degree murder. You have the right to remain silent." Emma clung to me, trembling, as her parents' world collapsed. But Daniel wasn't done fighting. As the cuffs clamped around his wrists, he snarled, "This isn't over, Mother. You think you've won, but you haven't. I'll take you down with me if it's the last thing I do." His words should have chilled me, but instead I felt the fire of decades of resilience burn hotter than ever before. I leaned close, my voice steady as stone. "No, Danny. The only thing you'll take with you are your own lies." The investigators led them toward the door, but even as the relief washed through me, a new dread crawled into my bones. Because in the shuffle of documents spilling from Becca's folder, I glimpsed a name I recognized. Not mine, not Robert Harris's, but another patient. A name tied to a lawsuit I thought was settled. And the truth hit me like ice. There were more victims, more lives stolen, more secrets buried. My son's betrayal wasn't just a family crime. It was a web that stretched farther and darker than I had ever imagined. And I knew then that exposing him at home was only the beginning. The real battle was still waiting, in courtrooms, in hospitals, in the shadows where his crimes still lingered unseen. The arrest was only the beginning. By sunrise the next day, the story had exploded across every major news outlet. "Cardiac surgeon arrested for elder abuse and fraud" scrolled across the chyron of every channel, his mugshot plastered beside Becca's, their eyes hollow under the glare of the booking camera. Neighbors whispered outside my house, reporters camped on the curb, microphones thrust forward as I shuffled down the driveway to fetch the mail, pretending weakness, while inside I burned with a strange new strength. Emma stayed close to me, her small frame shaking whenever classmates texted cruel headlines to her phone. "Dr. Dad denies mom blood. Power couple exposed as con artists." My heart ached for her, caught between the shame of her parents and the fragile pride of standing with me. But I reminded her daily, "You did nothing wrong, darling. You stood by the truth. That makes you stronger than both of them combined." Meanwhile, Henley worked like a general in battle, coordinating with prosecutors, investigators, and victim families. The malpractice cases we thought were whispers turned into a storm. 6 separate families came forward, each with stories darker than the last. An elderly woman conned into open-heart surgery she didn't need. A veteran left permanently disabled after Daniel sliced where he shouldn't have. And a diabetic patient denied treatment so he could bill for a more expensive procedure later. Every tale was a knife twisting deeper, proving my son hadn't just betrayed me, he had built a career on exploiting the vulnerable. Becca's law firm collapsed overnight, clients pulling out as soon as the scandal broke. Investigators traced missing trust funds, siphoned through shell accounts, right back into her personal credit cards and Daniel's failed gambling debts. The media called them the Judas couple, and though I hated the circus, I knew every headline was justice inching forward. Still, the emotional toll was crushing. At night, Emma would crawl into my bed, her face buried in my shoulder. "Grandma," she whispered once, "what if I turn out like them? What if their blood is my blood?" I stroked her hair and answered with the calm certainty of a woman who had seen life and death more times than she could count. "Blood doesn't make character, Emma. Choices do. And every choice you've made has been brave and good. You're nothing like them." But as much as I tried to comfort her, my own soul was restless. There were still unanswered questions, still loose threads, still whispers that Daniel's crimes went beyond the lawsuits on paper. And then the threats began. Anonymous letters slid under my door at night. "Drop the charges or lose everything." Phone calls with dead silence on the other end. One evening, as Emma and I returned from the grocery store, we found our living room window shattered, glass glittering across the rug like ice. On the wall above the couch, scrawled in black spray paint, were 3 words that froze my heart. "You'll be next." The police took a report, Cameras were installed, but the fear lingered like a shadow over our shoulders. Was it Daniel's allies? Former patients turned desperate? Or Becca's network of corrupt colleagues? We didn't know, but I refused to be intimidated. I had spent my life facing death in hospital corridors. I would not cower now. I doubled down, working with Henry to build a fortress of evidence. Every recording, every document, every witness statement was cataloged, secured in multiple places. If they want to silence me, I told Henry grimly, then they'll have to burn down the truth itself. And yet, in the darkest hours of the night, as Emma slept beside me, I wondered if perhaps that was exactly what they planned. Because one evening, tucked among the court summonses and medical reports, I found a sealed envelope with no return address. Inside was a single photograph. It showed me in my living room, asleep in my chair, Emma curled on the couch across from me. The angle was unmistakable, taken from inside my own home. My hands shook as I turned the photo over. Scrawled in the same jagged handwriting as the spray paint were the words, "This isn't over." The photograph shook me more than the broken window, more than the phone calls, because it meant someone had been inside my home, close enough to watch me and Emma breathe as we slept. I pressed the picture to my chest, steadying the panic that clawed at me, then called Henry immediately. Within an hour, he arrived with 2 detectives, their faces grim as they examined the evidence. "They're escalating," one said, "and it's someone who knows the layout of this house." My blood turned cold with realization. Daniel and Becca had lived here once, years ago, before buying their own McMansion with my money. They knew every creak in the floorboards, every lock that stuck. Henry's eyes burned with determination. "Eleanor, we need to end this now. No more waiting. Tomorrow we'll file everything. The recordings, the forged evaluations, the threats, even this photograph. We'll lock them down legally before they can lash out again." That night, I didn't sleep, sitting in my chair with a baseball bat across my lap, watching Emma's chest rise and fall as she dreamed. I promised myself, silently and fiercely, that no one, no judge, no lawyer, not even her own parents, would ever take her from me. The next morning, Henry and I walked into the courthouse, my cane tapping against the marble floor, my spine straighter than it had been in years. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashed, but I didn't flinch. I handed over the folder of evidence with hands steady as steel. By noon, the prosecutor filed expanded charges: fraud, conspiracy, attempted drugging, elder abuse, and yes, after forensic analysts reviewed Becca's late-night bragging, second-degree murder for the death of Robert Harris. The walls of their empire cracked wide open. Daniel's colleagues turned their backs. His hospital revoked his credentials, and Becca's bar association expelled her within days. Yet, the threats didn't stop. A week later, Emma discovered another note tucked under the windshield wiper of her car: "Stop or the girl pays." That was when I realized this wasn't just desperation, it was war. And so I fought back the only way I knew. Not with fists, but with truth. I reached out to Robert Harris's widow, to the families of Daniel's other victims, inviting them into my home. One by one, they came, faces lined with grief and rage, and together we built a coalition too strong to silence. We shared recordings, court filings, testimonies. It became more than my fight. It became a crusade for every life my son had ruined. The day of the trial was a spectacle. The courtroom overflowed with reporters, victims, lawyers, strangers drawn to the horror of a son who refused his own blood's blood. Daniel sat at the defense table in an ill-fitting suit, his arrogance stripped away, his eyes hollow. Becca beside him looked pale, her once perfect posture hunched under the weight of her crimes. Emma sat with me, holding my hand so tightly it turned white, her gaze locked on the parents she could barely recognize anymore. Witness after witness took the stand, patients describing unnecessary surgeries, financial experts unraveling the stolen funds, investigators detailing forged documents. Then came my turn. I rose slowly, the room holding its breath as I crossed to the witness stand. My voice trembled at first, but then found its strength, rising from decades of saving lives and raising a son who chose greed over love. On October 12th, I said, eyes locked on Daniel. As I lay bleeding on the hospital gurney, my son, the surgeon I worked 2 jobs to put through medical school, looked me in the eyes and said, "I'd rather watch you die than waste a drop of my blood on you." That wasn't just cruelty. It was a confession of who he truly was. Gasps rippled through the room. As the recording played, Daniel's voice cold and clear, impossible to deny. His head dropped into his hands, shame or rage, I couldn't tell. Becca wept silently as her own voice echoed next, bragging about falsifying evidence, her own words now chains around her wrists. When the verdict came, it landed like thunder. Guilty on all counts. Daniel sentenced to 25 years in federal prison, Becca to 15. No parole for at least a decade. The judge's gavel struck, and just like that, my son was gone, not to death, but to a cage of his own making. Outside the courthouse, reporters begged for a statement. I looked straight into the cameras and said, "I am not just a mother. I am a survivor, and I will never let age or betrayal silence me." Emma slipped her arm through mine, and in that moment, I knew the legacy of my life wasn't the son who tried to bury me. It was the granddaughter who stood beside me through the fire. Months later, as I watched Emma walk across her high school stage, diploma in hand, her smile brighter than the flashbulbs of the cameras, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. She was free, unbroken, determined to build a life nothing like the one her parents had destroyed. That night, as we sat together on the porch under a Virginia sky blazing with stars, she asked softly, "Grandma, do you ever regret exposing them? Do you ever wish you could have saved him?" I looked out at the dark horizon, my voice steady. "No, darling. Sometimes the only way to save someone is to let them face the truth they've been running from. And sometimes the only way to save yourself is to let them go." She leaned against me, and for the first time in years, I felt the weight lift. My story was no longer just about betrayal. It was about survival, justice, and the bond between a grandmother and granddaughter that no amount of lies could break. And as I share it with you now, I ask you, don't let stories like mine fade. Subscribe to this channel, Her Voice Story, because there are countless women like me who refuse to stay silent. Leave a like, share this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from so I know my voice has reached you. Because if my son taught me anything, it's this: silence protects the guilty, but truth destroys them. And this truth, my truth, is only the beginning.